Today I am going to be talking about my Elf Commander deck. This is a normal 100 card Commander deck led by the Commander Marwyn, the Nurturer. So for 3 mana, she's a 1/1 with the ability whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on her, and then you can tap to add an amount of green mana equal to her power. So she is a very strong commander, and this deck is centered around a lot of 1/1 counters, a lot of ramp, a lot of just big scary things that happen later in the game. Anyways, let's take a look at the deck. Alright, so this deck has a lot of creatures. We're looking at 40 creatures in the deck. 39 are elves, and 1 is an elemental, which I'll get into in a second. First elf, I have Elvish Rejuvenator. So when ETBs look at the top 5 cards of your library, you may put a land card from among them on the battlefield tapped, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So this is just ramp for the sake of ramp, and as you'll see, there aren't many lands in this deck, so trying to secure a lot of lands that we can early in the game is very beneficial, but we don't need that many lands because, again, Marwyn is our source of mana. Anyways, next card is the Beast Whisperer. So whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. We need a lot of card draw in this deck because we're going to be generating so much mana, we're going to be burning through our hand. So card draw is perfect, and this is a really good card. Next card is Lysalana Huntmaster. So whenever you cast an elf, create a 1/1 elf. With Marwyn, she'll get a counter for the 1/1 elf entering the battlefield, as well as the other counter for a creature you cast. So you can have a creature be cast, and you get a 1/1 elf warrior to go along with. And Marwyn will get 2 counters, 1 from the warrior and 1 from the creature. So Lysalana Huntmaster is a essential in pretty much any elf deck. Next is a new one from Forgotten Realms, Circle of the Dreams Druid. So it's 3 green for a 2/1. Tap, add green for each creature you control. Basically, it's just Gaia's Cradle in the form of creature. It is very good. Next is Wood Elves. Enters the battlefield, search your library for a forest card, put it on the battlefield, shuffle your library. Untapped, again, more land stuff. Ivy Lane Denizen. Whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So essentially with this, Marwyn can get 2 counters every time a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if you want to do that, or you can put the counters on other creatures if need be, but usually I only put them on Marwyn. So next is Seeker the Skybreak. Tap, untap target creature. Who do you think we're untapping? Double our mana. Classic card. Fintorn Elves. It is a Llanowar Elves, essentially. Llanowar Tribe. 3 mana Llanowar Elves. Argothian Elder. Tap, untap 2 target lands. So we're using this card because it's an elf, and also because we have a couple non-basic lands in this deck that will very much need to be untapped. Wirewood Channeler. X mana of any one color, obviously green, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. Since most of our creatures are elves, this is just good, and if we were playing with another elf deck, that would be even crazier. Canopy Tactician. Buff up all of our elves and add 3 mana. Spring Bloom Druid. So we can search for 2 basic land cards after sacking 1. Again, just more land ramp. Realm Seekers. This is an interesting one. I haven't seen this one in many elf decks. So 6 mana for 0/0, but enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, where X is the total number of cards in all players' hands. So we are going with that 1/1 counter synergy, and there are some cards in the rest of this deck that boost our 1/1 counters and stuff. So this will technically be stronger later if you have the right cards out. We can search our library for a land, reveal it, put it into our hand, then shuffle. Again, there's a couple lands in this deck that are non-basic that are very good, which I will go more in depth later. Draw a card, simple, visionary. Again, another buff, tap green for each elf you control. Archdruid is a classic in most elf decks. Voice of Many. As a battlefield, draw a card for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. So, Elvish Lyrist, just to destroy any threats on the battlefield in terms of enchantments. Just need a little bit of removal. Elvish Reclaimer. Again, mostly just land tutoring like the Realm Seekers. Parry is perfect. Again, buffs all of our elves. But we can also create 1/1 elf warriors to help boost Marwyn with the creatures entering the battlefield effects. Next, we have Reclamation Sage. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Dwinnen Gilt-Leaf Dian. I probably didn't pronounce that right. 3/4 reach. Our elves you control get +1/+1 on our boost. But then we're also going to gain life for each attacking elf we control. Another Land of War Elves. Sylvan Messenger. Basically, we're just going to put more elf cards into our hand. Next is Jiraga Warcaller. Now, this is an interesting card in this deck. So it has the multi-kicker, and each time you kick it, it gets a 1/1 counter. Other elves you control get +1/+1 for each 1/1 counter. So basically, we can put all of our counters on the Warcaller, and all of our elves, including Marwyn, will get boosted. Now, this is where things get interesting, because we also have Immaculate Magistrate. So we can put the 1/1 counters on Jiraga Warcaller and boost everyone up and keep doing it. Or if we don't have the Warcaller out, we can just put them on Marwyn. But the Magistrate is a very, very good card. Next is Well-Wisher. Going to gain some life just for each elf we control. Because usually this deck does get targeted a lot when I play. So I do need the life from time to time. Next is Timberwatch Elf. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. Obviously, we're going to be boosting Marwyn. So, simple enough. Titania's Chosen. Player casts a green spell, put a 1/1 counter. So you and anyone else who plays a green spell gets a 1/1 counter. It is great. Jagged Scar Archers, we're going to be using this to remove creatures with flying, essentially, because flying is a weakness with elves. So, finally, we have the classic Land of War Elves. Wolverine Riders, so we're just going to be creating elves every upkeep, and we are going to gain life from those elves and other elves entering the battlefield. So, very good card. Lysalana Bowmaster. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may have it deal 2 damage to a creature with flying. So again, more stuff to deal with flying creatures. Massive Mires, mostly just card draw, as well as some graveyard recursion, just in case we do have all of our elves wiped. Farhaven Elf, again, fetching for more lands. Deepwood Denizen. Now, this is a new one I tossed in this deck. It's from Modern Horizons 2. Basically, we're going to be using it to draw a card. This ability costs 1 less for each 1/1 counter on creatures you control. Obviously, we're going to have a lot on Marwyn. So we're essentially going to be paying 1 green mana every turn that we have to draw a card. So, it's very good. Noel Mage Shepherd. Again, more artifact enchantment removal. This time consistent. It's not just a one-off kind of deal. We can tap 4 creatures we control to do it. Kilrana, Collar of Wirewood. It's like a Land of War Elves in a sense, but basically we can also get some card draw once we cast some more expensive spells. Armorcraft Judge, card draw. Each 1/1 counter we have on creatures, which is obviously going to be a lot. And last but not least, Soul of the Harvest. Now, this one is the only card in this deck that is not an elf. So 6 mana for a 6/6 trample. But whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So this is very good in terms of just card draw. So it really doesn't matter if it's an elf or not, because we do have 39 other elves. So having Soul of the Harvest out is not a issue at all in terms of synergies, because we do get that card draw to draw for more elves. So yeah. Next are sorceries. So we have Harmonize, draw 3 cards, classic. Roots of Wisdom. So we're going to be using this mostly for recursion. Early in the game, if you want to play it and you need it, you can use it for card draw. Bounty of Skemfar. So we're using this to get lands and to put an elf into our hand. It's pretty good. Next is Regrowth, classic recursion. Eldritch Evolution. Now, this is a new one I put in because I don't have access to a worldly tutor at the moment. But it is it's a pseudo worldly tutor. So you have to sacrifice a creature, which is a downside with this deck because it doesn't have a lot of graveyard synergies. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So it's a pretty good card because you can tutor for some endgame creatures. Shamanic Revelation, card draw, and gain life. Classic. Cultivate, ramp, simple stuff. Elvish Promenade. This counts as an elf card because it is a tribal sorcery. And we're just going to create a ton of elf warriors with this card. So it is very good. And with Marwyn, she's going to get counters for each of those elves that we create. Wildest Dreams. Again, more graveyard recursion. I'm thinking about switching this out with Long Rest from Forgotten Realms. But I've been working with this for a little bit, and it's pretty good, especially when you have a ton of green mana. You can essentially just bring most of your graveyard back to your hand. So, very good stuff. All right, next we have the instance. Ancient Animus. This is simply just removal. Obviously, Marwyn does like the counters that gets placed on her, but it's mostly just removal. Heroic Intervention. We're going to be using this in case we get wrathed or something gets targeted, or we just lose most of our board state. Elven Ambush. Similar to the Elvish Promenade, we're just going to basically double the amount of elves. Benefactor's Drought. Basically just a really good source of card draw, and we can untap all of our creatures, which means we can tap Marwyn again for mana. Very good card. Invigorating Surge. Double the counters we have on a creature, doubling them on Marwyn. And this was a new one that I put in this deck, Veil of Summer. This card is just bonkers. So basically, we can cast this whenever an opponent does like a counter spell or, some kind of removal or something like that. We get draw a card. They can't be our spells cannot be countered. It essentially counters a counter spell. And we gain hexproof from blue and black until end of turn. Very good, especially at a 1-drop. It's just insane. I'm surprised this isn't uncommon. Next, we have our artifacts. We have the Ozolith. This is a very good card because Marwyn frequently dies if people are playing the game right, because she usually ends up having a ton of counters, ton of mana. It's insane. So with the Ozolith, we can make sure that her progress isn't completely reset by transferring her counters to this. Next is Staff of Domination. Now this is an insane combo piece with Marwyn, because essentially it just goes infinite if Marwyn has enough counters, because she can tap for a bunch of mana. We can use 3 of that mana to untap her, then just tap it again and again and again. We get infinite card draw, tap down everyone's creatures, untap our creatures, gain an infinite amount of life. It's a bonkers card. It's a bonkers card. And I'm thinking about tossing in Umbral Mantle at some point in time. I just haven't gotten around to getting the card yet. Next is Caged Sun. Choosing green, creatures get a buff, and we get a double our mana. I'm thinking about cutting this out just because we don't need a ton of mana at this point, and for a 6-drop, there's better cards that we can toss in. So next is Panharmonicon. Doubles the entering the battlefield effect of Marwyn and all of our other creatures. So with Marwyn, we're going to get 2 counters instead of 1. And with cards like Beast Whisperer, we can double our card draw. Panharmonicon is just a very, very good card. Next is Swiftfoot Boots. I'm thinking about swapping this out with Lightning Greaves. I, again, just haven't gotten around to it. Hexproof Haste. Toss it on Marwyn. Soul Ring, essential. Skull Clamp, essential, especially with a lot of 1/1 Elf Warriors. Arcane Signet, essential. Thought Vessel, because we will be drawing a lot of cards late game. This is a good one to have. 1,000-Year Elixir. Just basically, if we have this on the battlefield and we send out Marwyn, we can tap her immediately. So, very, very good stuff. Next, Enchantments. So, Defense of the Heart, we can, because in a game of EDH, an opponent is going to have 3 or more creatures. You can sack it and tutor for 2 creature cards and put them immediately into play. Very good card. Branching Evolution. We're going to double counters that we put on creatures. So, just insane. Beastmaster Ascension. So, we are going to be a little bit aggressive with this deck. So, having the +5/+5 buff is going to be amazing. Especially with Marwyn, where we can get 5 extra mana. Evolutionary Escalation. I'm thinking about cutting this one out just because it helps our opponents out. And we put 3 counters on a creature we control. And we really don't need 3 counters, especially later in the game. We don't want our opponent's creatures to get stronger. Lurking Predators. This is a really good card. So, opponent casts a spell. We reveal a top card of our library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it on the bottom of the library. There's a 40% chance of a little bit over 40% chance of revealing a creature card every time they do it. And that's every time they cast a spell. So it's a very, very good card. Next, we only have 3 non-basics. I'm probably going to toss in Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx at some point, but I haven't gotten to it. So first we have Opal Palace. This is very good for just getting Marwyn some extra counters if she's ever leaving the command zone. Next is Wirewood Lodge, an essential in almost any elf deck. Untap target elf. Obviously, we're untapping the queen herself. Next is Rogue's Passage. We're going to want to make things like Realm Seekers or Marwyn to be unblockable at the end of the game. That way we can swing in for 21 points of commander damage or more and just ultimately end the game. Rogue's Passage is an essential. Alright, and then for basics, we have 26 basic forests. So this deck is pretty light on lands, only having 29. But we do have some mana artifacts, and obviously our commander produces a lot of mana that we don't need from basic lands. So, yeah, that's my commander deck, Marwyn the Nurturer. She is pretty crazy, especially if you do not control her at the beginning of the game, because once she hits the battlefield and we start casting creatures from our library, it gets insane. So, hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a comment for any feedback that you have for me, and like, share, subscribe. And I also created a Patreon just the other day. So feel free to check that out. The link is in the description. If you want to help support the channel, I really appreciate it. I also do have a Twitter page, which I will be posting random channel updates, as well as just, personal Twitter stuff. So, yeah, hope you all enjoyed this.